Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 51, all about the Riddler.
Who?
No, that's wrestling.
Who?
What are you, an owl?
What? What?
I'm not doing this with you.
No?
No, not now.
Yes?
Wow.
Sorry, I'll stop.
And here I was saying we're going to get right into it. We're not going to muck around much. We're going to get right into it, and you had to go and blow it.
Sorry.
President level patron Brian asked that we cover the Riddler. So for number 51, that's who we're going to get into. So the Riddler, nemesis of Batman. So Riddler was created by Bill Finger and Dick Sprang in Detective Comics number 140, October of 1948. Edward Nigma, Enigma. Get it? Get it? Enigma? Riddle? Puzzle? Get it? Get it?
Maybe.
all attempted subtlety just thrown out the window there. I think originally his name was Edward Nashton, but then they said, let's make it Enigma.
Yeah. Can't miss an opportunity like that.
No, because if your name is a pun, you will end up either a hero or a villain. Or if you have alliteration in your name, you'll end up a hero or a villain. It's just how it was back then. So Edward Nigma loved puzzles so much that he became obsessed with using puzzles to cheat people out of money because it was something involving school. And
yeah, it was a school project.
He cheated on the project, and he said, well, everybody loves me for figuring out this puzzle. I bet I can get adulation for it. And then it became, I can get fame and I can get money and I can steal things using puzzles. And you know who I could outwit? Batman. So he takes on the Dark Knight because he deems that Batman is a worthy adversary. So long story short, and again, because he's been around for so long, we're not really going to get into the details on too much. A lot of the older folks may be aware of the Riddler through the Batman TV series with Adam West, where Frank Gorshin played him.
Yep.
That was basically the way that he was done, though, and the way he was characterized in that series was basically the Joker with a different costume.
Yeah, although he did have riddles, it was a part of it. But so many other characters also had those types of clues for traps for Batman because that's just the way things were. So he wasn't as unique in the TV show, I think. Now, my main introduction to him was Batman the Animated Series, which had a little different backstory where he was a technician that created Maze of the Minotaur, which was a video game, or computer game, I should say. And he ended up getting fired without the royalties for it. And he got so ticked off that he decided he was going to lead a life of crime. And he was going to continue to show people just how good he was at creating these different puzzles. So same premise, different elongation of the backstory.
Yeah. So he's battling Batman over the decades. He inevitably leaves riddles for Batman to figure out because he feels that Batman is the only person who's potentially smart enough to figure these things out with him. And Batman always wins because Batman. So in the Hush storyline, this is where Riddler determines Batman's secret identity of Bruce Wayne, and he threatens to expose it. But Batman says that a riddle that everyone knows the answer to is meaningless. So that actually gets the Riddler to hold on to that and not expose him. But he does use it to his own benefit for some time.
Yep.
And then he spends a little while where he's not really dealing with Batman so much. He's more of an adversary of the Green Arrow. And then he gets knocked out and he spends a year in a coma. And when he wakes up, he finds himself cured of his insanity and obsession with riddles because that's how the brain works. No, It's not. But he doesn't remember when he wakes up that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
So convenient.
Yeah. Que suerte. So he decides to assist several heroes using his intellect because he's still brilliant, but he decides to be, a reformed villain for a good number of years. But he's still kind of a pain in Batman's butt because He's very just ruthless and efficient with it.
Yeah.
And
he's glad that he's solving puzzles, and they happen to be puzzles related to criminals and doing good, but that really isn't his MO. The puzzles themselves, the solving the mystery itself is his reward, not necessarily any good that comes about it.
yeah, exactly. It's about the intellectual pursuit for him. It's not about the ultimate good that it does to people. And then he ends up, of course, returning to villainy after being hit with a bomb, which restarts his psychosis. Because again, that's how the brain works. No, it isn't. So in the New 52, it's basically the same adversarial stance with Batman, except now he has a new look with a mohawk.
You know what? I know we don't talk about fashion that much, but you gotta appreciate the variety in the Riddler's looks, from the spandex question mark stuff to the green suit, a little more sophisticated, depending on what type of hat he was wearing, be it a bolo hat or sometimes I've seen a pork pie, whatever. But then the one thing that he always has is that cane. I always thought that was really awesome.
Well, canes are cool.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to be a pimp with it, you know? He always had it in that style. You know, like, look at me. This is badass.
Well, it just exuded that confidence. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I agree. He doesn't have to be Dolomite with it all the time. So then in DC Rebirth, he starts off that era as an inmate in Arkham Asylum, and he's actually helping Gotham PD against the Joker for a short spell because he and the Joker are at war. It starts off where he offers Joker a partnership because he says that if either of them killed Batman, the other one would be unfulfilled. And Joker shoots him in the stomach and leaves.
I'm not going to lie. I haven't read this. So hearing that, simultaneously, I'm thinking, man, that's cold. And the way the Joker would do it, I could picture that being incredibly funny. So there you go. And if you really want to know my thoughts on the Joker, check out that episode. That was episode 2, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. That was our second episode. So that's many, many ways away. Then he ends up forming a team to fight the Joker in what essentially amounts to a turf war over Gotham, the war of jokes and riddles.
Whoa. I could picture that being an interesting dichotomy of organized chaos and true chaotic chaos. You know, it's rare. I don't usually say this, but I think you just got me to read more comics just to find out the details of this. That's how intriguing I find this.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't always get a chance to read as many comics as we would like to research beforehand. And we do our level best to try and get some knowledge of them. But
yeah, we can't read everything, but I can tell you, I've read plenty of Riddler, so a lot of this stuff I already knew. It's just this one section, I'll admit, I checked out. Sorry.
Yeah, this is recent stuff. I think this is actually the Tom King era of Batman.
And I got to catch up. And the parts that I've read though have been fantastic, but man, oh man, it's a lot. It gets pretty deep pretty fast. So
that's what she said. I'm sorry, you put that one out there.
Sure. You're not even gonna acknowledge all of my references in the beginning, but then you're gonna go with a really cheap joke like that. Nice.
Well, that was in the middle of it, not the beginning.
Wow.
All right, there, Wario. So moving on to the issues, Brian's question is the first question: why does he leave puzzles for Batman to find?
Okay. The first one I can actually give an in-comics reference because I do read them, doggone it. So there was a retcon that happened where Riddler's father was abusive towards him. And the reason was Riddler was doing so well in school and seemed to be so smart. His dad never really made it that far in life and was essentially jealous of him. So he would beat him to within an inch of his life because he would say to Riddler, I know you're lying. I know you're cheating. I know you're making all of this up. Nobody is that good. So Riddler developed a complex where he would always tell the truth. There's just one little problem. The retcon wasn't all the way. So he was still a villain, and you don't always get a villain if you're going to say you're always going to tell the truth. So the riddles are a way for him to provide information to other people while concealing it long enough for his crimes to occur. it kills two birds with one stone. So that's the in-comic version I can give without even getting into any psychology of it. But that's no fun. So let's go with the psychology of it. The Riddler focuses so much on esoteric information, and we know these people, mainly because the two of us sitting across from each other are these people. What am I talking about? How much useless crap do you know, Anthony? Be honest.
Oh, I would say it's probably 95% of the stuff in my brain.
Same here. Now, unfortunately, because we still have to interact with the rest of society, that information is swimming around at all times. And unfortunately, once in a while, it ends up getting out. And both of us have enough social skill that we don't just automatically blurt random things out at random times.
Maybe you.
Unless we're in certain company. I was trying to clean it up. Give me a chance.
Whether I'm in certain company or not, this stuff still comes out. It's leaking out of my brain. I can't help it. I have to, if I hear a reference, I am constitutionally compelled to say, oh, by the way, did you know this about this?
Well, in a way, though, you're still pointing out what I do as well, which is you at least look for opportunities and you look for the moments you can insert those types of references. The Riddler doesn't have to do that because he creates the scenarios himself. He doesn't wait for opportunities. He wants to show this off all the time, and he doesn't care in what context. So it's great that you can set things up where you have these intricate plots and crimes and all these other things that people are going to have to try and stop. So you're going to have an audience, even if they don't know exactly who it is, and you can put out whatever content you want at all times. And he's willing to do it with puzzles, riddles, etc. So he's going to keep doing it because it garners exactly what he wants for his own brain. He wants people to think about these things because they're brilliant, and he wants people to know about the brilliance. He just doesn't do it in a direct way because even in his mind, he recognizes just going up to somebody and say, hey, I got the greatest riddle in the world. You want to hear it? 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 Not exactly a good way to ingratiate yourself with other people. So that's, I think, the initial premise as to why he does what he does. I think we can get a little bit into more of this stuff with Brian's next question, but I'll let you, ask that because I don't know if you have other thoughts on what I just said.
No, I think you pretty much covered it. So the next question Brian had is, why doesn't he stop since he always loses?
That's a great point. Most people would recognize that this is a flaw in what they're trying to ultimately accomplish and just stop there. And that's where we really get into psychopathology. Okay. Edward Nigma may have obsessive compulsive disorder or obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Many of you are saying, Doc, what's wrong with you? Why are you repeating the same thing? Except diagnostically, they're not the same thing. Obsessive compulsive disorder is considered a primary anxiety diagnosis that is categorized by obsessions and compulsions. Once again, Doc doesn't sound like he's saying anything complicated. Obsessions mean you constantly think about a certain topic all the time, regardless of what you really want to be focusing on. Compulsions are actions that you are taking regardless of what you want to be doing at the time. They do not always have to go together. They do not always have to happen concurrently. So, a person can purely have a compulsion and have no reason in their own mindset as to why they do it. So someone that constantly washes their hands may not have germophobia. They may simply have that ritual for maybe some other deep-seated reason that we don't know yet. Or a person can constantly think about being clean and whether or not there are germs present in the room and yet may not have any physical actions that go along with that. Even though we get the stereotype that things have to merge and go hand in hand. And all of this is still only talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. So if I were to put Nigma in this category, I would say that he has the obsession with riddles themselves, and he won't ever think about things outside of riddles and why he would have to continue. That's one way to look at it. Having said that, anybody that's really read any semblance of long-standing comics with him knows that he has other conversations and he takes a lot of elaborate time to set things up. If he gives you a simple riddle, it's because he doesn't respect you. he doesn't do it that way purely because he has to get a riddle out there. He can hold on to them for a long period of time, and it doesn't seem to cause him much distress in that manner. So I'm not sure that obsessive compulsive disorder itself perfectly fits. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder does not have to have obsessions or compulsions. Because it's a personality disorder, it points out that you have a certain set of traits in how you interact with people in general that can lead to some level of discomfort. For example, and once again, you do not have to feel personally attacked, anyone that hears these things. If you notice that compared to a lot of your peers, you take much more time in organizing and planning things around you, or that you become so meticulous in certain goals that you have that you're willing to do it at the detriment of other things, even if it will change from time to time what that goal is. And other people don't seem to understand or respect the amount of effort and energy that you're putting into those things, and you're willing to do it potentially at the detriment of other parts of your life, at least temporarily, to get those things done. But it seems like you always have a goal or a certain style or system that you want to have implemented at all times, no matter what's going on, even if they're different topics or different settings, then this may hit home to you. I'm saying this because as a physician, this is the most common personality type that we see in our class, because we wouldn't have, in theory, gone as far as we have if we didn't utilize the things that we do on a daily basis to learn lots of material over relatively short periods of time and learn how to apply it in multiple settings in a fairly rapid fashion, because if we don't, people are going to die. That's the positive side. The negative side is the idea that you're willing to be on call for so long and do so much training, so much education, that you do it at the detriment of other entertainment, of other opportunities to interact with people, for your own financial benefit, to be honest with you, because medical school is incredibly expensive. I'm doing this as a generalization. Clearly, there are going to be exceptions, and not everybody that's in medical school has obsessive compulsive personality disorder. That's way too broad a stroke to paint with a brush. But I'm pointing out that certain traits, including someone like Nigma, who's willing to have all of these schemes done and wants to make sure that it has a stylized theme, no matter what's going on, and is willing to adjust and modify as long as it's within that system to focus on the few things that he cares about, be it at the time money, be it at the time possessions of other people or power, or attacking someone, whatever the case may be. Taking all of that time and effort at the detriment of the idea of having any other regular personal life, I think that's relatable. And I think that may be more relatable than just pure obsessive compulsive disorder. The two can happen simultaneously. And I'm not trying to say that these are perfectly fit diagnoses. But to Brian's point, why on earth would he still do it, even though Batman is causing him problems or it's to his detriment? Either way, I think there's a good explanation for that. Because it doesn't matter if he, quote unquote, wins or loses. It's whether or not he wins or loses that way. If Batman is solving his riddles, he'll say, one day I will get one that he can't solve and I'll win. That's his approach. He doesn't care as much about whether or not he's winning against Batman. It's, I have to make sure that I stump him and he's humiliated. As long as it's my riddles. Heaven forbid someone else came up with a riddle that Batman couldn't get and beat him that way. Then he'd be furious, because that's him. That's his. He knows it. He owns it. So
that's his gimmick.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I do think that a lot of people can certainly relate to the notion of obsessive compulsive personality disorder. What I find to be a little, I hesitate to say insulting, but reductive, I'll put it that way, is when people say, "Oh, I'm so OCD about it. I have an OCD about this." No, you're just very particular. That's not, it's not OCD. It's not an obsession. And don't denigrate the actual people who are dealing with OCD or OCPD by saying that just because you're particular about how, like your silverware put away, or you hang your plates, or whatever it is that you're doing, that makes you OCD. You don't have OCD. You're just very particular.
That's a great point. And I'll go ahead. I'll use the exact example that you gave. If you like your silverware put a certain way and you get mad that other people put it a different way.
Me.
And it bothers you and at some point you let it go because you're a functional human being, Anthony, then kudos to you. You know, you can have your own style, your own personality. I hope you do, as a matter of fact. That's a wonderful thing. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you spend your next 2 hours doing that exact same task, okay, now we're talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. If there's any other clear way to say this, when I say impacting a person's daily routine or daily life, that's as far as I can go. It's literally taking way too much time where somebody looks at you, similar to a very famous person, Marc Summers.
Swear to God, I was just about to say Marc Summers spending all night straightening out the fringes on his carpet.
Right, exactly. Use that as an example, and that's okay. I think everybody can get the premise of OCD without misusing it in colloquial terms.
Excellent. So the last question is, during his reformation, he woke up out of the coma, he retains his intelligence and his detachment from humanity, but he still wants to do good. Why?
We can start with the most base point. He's noticed that the results of doing things against what multiple people are doing around him has led to injury. And that's a survival, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's the bottom basement. If you're doing things and people are attacking you, then you need to change just so that you can live long enough to do something different. So a coma could do that. I'll admit that. You already touched on it very well, though, that no, it's not like every other movie where you get amnesia and it's magical how certain things remain the same while other things are completely forgotten for the sake of plot. So that's not realistic. There's good news about comas in general. Sometimes people are placed in medically induced comas because the amount of trauma physically that they've experienced would be too great. If you've had burns over most of your body and you're going to need skin grafting and all of those things, you don't want to be screaming for hours on end when they're doing these replacements. Or you've had other serious physical injuries and the experience of pain is causing you to move too much and you're going to make things worse. So the idea that he was in a coma and still afterwards, despite however long it was, he was able to retain his intelligence, that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. I know we always think that automatically if somebody is in a coma that they're not going to be the same person, and that's true, but it doesn't have to result in a lower IQ. But the idea that he doesn't have the same motivations or an A motivation when it comes to his interactions with people while still, quote unquote, doing good, I would challenge that. I'm not so sure he's separated those out. We already have the primary need to survive, which is going to be ramped up after he's had such a significant injury, a significant trauma. And in addition to that, he has enough observational skill to notice that you do get some level of rewards when you follow a certain path. And some of those rewards are things that he directly wants: attention, fame, adulation. Some of them he doesn't care about. People like him. The world is a better place. I don't think that's as important to him. So there is a way that he can balance these two things out. And it actually comes back to, I think I mentioned Skinner in a previous episode. I don't remember which one. But the idea simply of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment. By the way, negative reinforcement and punishment are not the same thing. I'm going to explain what that means. Positive reinforcement is something that everybody understands. You do something that somebody wants, you get a reward. Fantastic. Negative reinforcement is you're having a negative experience, a negative stimulus, and in the process of your reaction, that negative stimulus is taken away. So now you're no longer suffering from that negative stimulus. Punishment is you take an action and something negative is done to you. Riddler has experienced all of this. Sometimes as the person initiating it, sometimes not. Being beaten to within an inch of your life that you're in a coma was a punishment, clearly. But then there's also the negative stimulus where you're in a coma, you're not doing the things that you used to do. once you're out of the coma, you get the opportunity now to do things again. So now you have the opportunity for negative stimulus, meaning you're back to where you were. That's a good thing. But you still don't have all the things you want. So now, in the end, you want the positive reinforcement. You want the reward. So he went through that entire continuum with his experience and ended up in this mishmash of, why are you doing good when you don't really care about the quote-unquote good results? He has his own positive reinforcement. It's just not the one that everybody expects. And the punishment and negative reinforcement that preceded it were so disparate and so weird that it sets this whole situation up.
Interesting. I like that notion that it's not a bad thing that he's not deriving what we consider to be the regular positive reinforcement, but that he has his own. Now, the question then, I guess the follow-up question becomes then, is the fact that he's doing the good, even if it's for his own weird or unique, I'll put it that way. I don't want to judge. For his own unique positive reinforcement, is that sufficient enough to warrant keeping it going, even though he's got the detachment, even though it's still doing the positive? Can we, I guess, or would we societally say this is a good thing, or are we saying, no, if you're going to do this greater good, you have to do it in this way? Like that's a larger scope question, and I don't really want to get into that because I think it's going to be too esoteric and detached from the episode or from the point of it. But it's just one of those things that occurred to me. Like, is it good to do the good for your own reasons, even if we don't like what those reasons are? Is that enough to tolerate it because you're still in the end getting the results done? Or do we as a collective society want you to do it because of these reasons that we have determined you should be doing it? That's like an ethical and sociological and philosophical question. It just occurred to me when we were discussing this, but it just popped into my head.
Well, I think that's a great question, and I'll admit I don't have an overarching answer to that, but I will say that's the premise of fake it till you make it. If you don't inherently have the motivation that people think you should about a topic, but you're still completing all of the actions that ultimately may lead to a similar mindset, then I think that's an okay starting point. How far that develops is on a case-by-case basis. I like I said, I don't have an overarching answer to that, and that is a great philosophical question that I'm sure our leaders of the free world are contemplating all the time and trying to come up with wonderful answers, because that's above my pay grade.
I don't know that the leaders of any portion of the free world are considering that, but I digress, and that's all I'll say about it. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll get into treatment.
Do you or someone you know struggle through life with anxiety-related mental disorders? Ever get that feeling that you are one of the few? I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. Take a journey with me as I talk about key points in my past and how they may have led to me being diagnosed with anxiety and panic disorder. After which, we will talk about different ways to tone down the anxiety and maybe even beat it together on anxiety. The easiest way to remember the name is by thinking about how one searches for a state of zen in the midst of the anxieties of life. My name is Gerald, and I'm the host of Anxiety.
Hello, I'm Ood Gallifrey.
I'm Sage Murray.
And I'm Leon Felger.
And we are the Occulte Veritatis podcast. We talk about anything that intrigues, horrifies, or interests us, including true crime,
Serial killers,
Military conspiracies,
and other mysteries and horrors of reality. So get cozy with your favorite alcoholic beverage.
Smoke a joint or two.
Only if it's legally purchased medicinal marijuana, of course. And tune in. We would love to have you.
You would.
You can find all of our links, all of the ways you can subscribe, and the rest of our bullshit at www.ovpod.ca. We hope you listen in soon.
And we're back. So getting into treatment now, starting as we always do with in-universe. Do you put him back in a coma so that he goes back to doing good? Well, I don't know, because it's clear that he was doing good after the coma, but then the bomb re-triggered his psychosis because, again, that's how the brain works in DC universe. But how do you get it to the point that you get his compulsion, for lack of a better term, to a net positive for society, or at the very least where it's not harmful to himself or to others? Doesn't even have to be a net positive, just at least not harmful to himself or to others.
Right. Batman has actually shown a decent template of this, because Riddler doesn't just like creating riddles, he likes to solve them. And if you can get him to focus on quote-unquote positive riddles, who murdered this person? Who committed this crime of thievery? How would a person be able to survive a horrible terroristic threat? Then you may have his attention, because the more detailed and intricate it becomes, at the very least, you'll have something that occupies him for a certain period of time. And then the end result may be a good thing. My concern with this approach would be that he would become so myopic about solving that particular puzzle or particular riddle that he would be willing to do things to the detriment of others. So if on the surface the question is who committed this murder, he may very well say, how do I get this person that I'm suspecting already out into the open? Oh, I know. I'll just kill their family. Well, that's not a good thing and not what we want to focus on. So it would be potentially grading the level of riddles that we would look for him to solve and giving, ironically, more boundaries, which would interest him even more. It would be similar to telling someone, solve a Rubik's Cube in a certain period of time, because only people with elite intelligence can solve Rubik's Cubes in very fast times. Right, Anthony?
I never got better than, about a minute 10.
And just like that, you've alienated most of society. I set you up so well for that. Congratulations.
If you were to give it to me now, I couldn't do it because it's been so long since I've cubed. I've literally forgotten all the algorithms.
Yeah, I know. I'm just pointing out, though, that as long as you continue to iterate in different modalities, something for a person like him to be occupied with, and make sure that the goals are either neutral or slightly net positive, then you're going to end up with better results that way than just saying, hey, man, don't you realize how much good you could do in the world with that intellect? Like, come on, that's going to fall on deaf ears. So I would focus more on that. I wouldn't even be trying to change if they truly are. Do you have to do that right now?
I wanted to get it on. I wanted to get the sound of it on.
Yeah, I know. My goodness. So, anywho,
because I still keep it on my desk.
And
it taunts me.
And by the way, no, he didn't just solve it, because I was thinking, is someone going to think because he just plopped it down and you could hear that on a mic, like, did he really just solve it that quick? No, he didn't.
No, I didn't.
Anyway, to get back to the point, as long as you're keeping the goals realistic, where he doesn't have to interpret them a certain way for there to be a positive result, I think that would be the best thing to do in universe. So just taking it one step at a time, where he may get upset because it's not intricate enough, but if you continue to tease that carrot that it's going to continue to get more complex, which is true for life in general, then he'll at least continue that intellectual pursuit, as you so well put it earlier. So that's what I would be focusing on. I wouldn't even be saying, don't, stop doing these compulsions with the riddles. It would be, how do we alter this so that these riddles are effective for you and for other people, or at least less harmful, as you already said, and really target it day by day by day, just something that would be able to occupy him. Because this gentleman has shown the second that you give him his own idle mind, he goes out there.
Yeah, that's something I can definitely relate to. The idle mind is certainly the devil's plaything with me. And if left to my own devices, I can become very self-destructive, and it doesn't take very long. So I need to constantly be stimulated. And that's why, at least for me personally, I'm always trying to come up with different things. I'm always trying to experiment with new ideas, new paths, new challenges, just to keep myself occupied.
Right. And you know what's interesting? This type of mindset, especially someone like the Riddler, the combination of intelligence and everything else, is highly prone to substance use because of the mind-altering properties. And that can, once again, when taken too far, can be incredibly destructive in a short period of time. Some people use it as an opportunity for creativity, but at the same time, those other effects don't go away. So you may wonder how on earth someone like a Riddler, ironically, would be a prime candidate, depending on what their family background is and circumstances and availability, etc., to be an alcoholic right from the start. Because the amount of tension and anxiety of what they're doing, while fulfilling when it's done in the process, may just lead them to find those types of outlets and lead to self-destruction even quicker.
Yeah, something to take the edge off, or something to numb, to quiet the brain down. Something along those lines is how someone like him could definitely take advantage of it or view it. Out of universe, I think this is one of those instances where the Riddler is one of those characters that we cover that isn't too far off of, a real person. There's certainly no powers to deal with.
Right.
He's just very smart, very clever.
Yeah.
And so what would you say to someone who has basically, these types of obsessions and compulsions in real life? How do you treat them realistically?
This is the part that people find very painful in therapy, because whether I'm talking about specifically obsessive compulsive disorder or I'm talking about obsessive compulsive personality disorder, it's a matter of finding out what types of discomfort the person experiences on a daily basis and how to allow them to be comfortably uncomfortable. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but what I mean is there has to be a certain level of tolerance for things that are not exactly the way that you want them to be. So for specific obsessive compulsive disorder, that can be a matter of exposure. If it's a matter of a compulsion, let's say it's a light switch. You have to flick a light switch on and off 25 times before you enter or leave a room. You can do that systematically. All right, next time you leave the room, pick a number that you're comfortable with that's less than 25. So if it's 24, great. Most people, for whatever reason, I don't have the scientific background with this, just my experience, they'll usually pick another number, either like 20, 15, a multiple of 5, something like that. But in any case, as long as it's reduced, great. Do that. And you're there to be that coach and say, all right, you're done. Bye-bye. Next time, or whatever timeline is necessary, you gradually continue to improve on that. That's for the behavioral side of it physically. If it's an obsession, then it's a little different, but it can be a matter of being systematic desensitization. It can be role play. It can actually even be psychoanalytical if a person really has that bent where they're willing to discuss things that way. But the point is, you challenge. What's the worst thing that happens with this? In other words, do things get destroyed if this is what's going on? In all honesty, it depends. If a person is a sanitation engineer and they're a germaphobe, then there is a good reason why they want things to be clean. So at their job, that's fantastic. The problem is when you go home, do you consider everything to be contaminated, dirty, and you can only think of things that way, and therefore it causes you great angst. And it can be as simple as starting with, okay, well, tell me. And it can unfortunately devolve into hypochondriacs for that particular one. But it doesn't matter what the obsession is. Let's say the obsession is you have to remember the full lineup of your hockey team and all of the patterns for their substitutions during every game. And you have to have it memorized so that anytime there's a change, you know that that's what's going to happen next. And the answer, of course, or the rather the challenge is, what happens if you don't do that? And you could take that a philosophical approach. You could do it much more practical. Okay, what did the player say to you when the line substitution wasn't the way it was last week? And it's like, well, I'm not with the team. I don't. Okay. Interesting point. Not even saying they're wrong. Just saying you've made the observation that something is different than what you perceive it to be. Let that person come to the conclusion. So you continue to add this up, and most people, when you have enough cognitive dissonance, will say,
I was literally just about to say cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, something is off here, and this is ridiculous. And when that person comes to that realization, it's not instantaneous, it's not dramatic like in the movies or anything like that. It's more like, I don't feel as stressed about this. Often that's how it starts. And the fact that the person recognizes that there's a release, there is a release of tension, can be enough that they will continue along this path. That's all dealing with specific OCD. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is much more like a debate, I'm going to be honest. And I'm not saying that there is one set pathway in discussing that with the person, because they often have, not to sound derogatory, they have a method to their madness, and it does produce positive results. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I want you to continue with the positive results, but first you have to get the person to realize, is there something that is creating a negative in your life or in the lives of other people you care about? If that is true, then is there something that can be adjusted so that there is a slight improvement compared to what is going on now? And phrasing it that way is important, because a person with obsessive compulsive personality traits often is looking to improve their iteration, because they know in the long run it's going to produce better results. There was a reason they came up with their system to begin with, and they don't like direct challenges, but they do like improvements. So as long as you keep that the focus, instead of saying, by the way, you really screwed up this part, right? That shuts things down immediately.
So don't tell them they're wrong. Tell them there's a potentially better way.
Exactly.
And then they'll channel their energy into using or finding that better way.
Right. And sometimes, depending on a lot of other factors, you may take a backseat role to that, or you may be much more integrated in that role. An example of where the therapist may be more integrated is if it's directly related to something that both people are aware of. We all know that we can't know everything about every topic, but if you have something that's common, and I know some therapists are going to say you don't talk about yourself, I get it, but if you decorate your office, you've already given hints to your life, for the most part, really. Even if it's a matter of you put up generic paintings on the wall, you're basically saying, well, I'm willing to tolerate this look because this is what I like to sit in on a daily basis. And that person, let's say the patient is a decorator, and they say, wow, that's an interesting choice. Like, oh, is that what you do? Okay, that's good to know. How's that going with your job? Interesting. And are there any parts that you feel like aren't quite the way you want them to be? Anything you want to change? Like, what do you want to change? That's a good question. Huh. And how has that affected your family? Interesting. So they don't want you to spend as much time on this. Huh. Is there a way you could do this more efficiently? Like, what would you do with this room right now if you knew that you had to be out of here in 45 minutes? All of a sudden, I just took it from what could have been a really personal conversation, me talking about my family or whatnot because I like these decorations, to completely leaving it focused on the patient, what they do, what their goals are, and actually giving them an assignment that in theory could apply to multiple parts of their lives. It's that subtle. So,
wow, he's good.
Oh, brother. I wish I were, but that's ideal stuff. This is really messy most of the time, and it doesn't go that smoothly. But in an ideal circumstance, that's the way it goes.
Hey, listen, that's, what we talk about when we're discussing the treatment is we discuss ideals and we say, all right, well, this is the ideal. And then at least, if nothing else, we give our listeners something that they can shoot for or something that they can say, this is what I would like to achieve, even if I'm not there yet. Because it's all about self-improvement, and self-improvement is It's incremental. As I say to my wife all the time, recovery is not linear. And you may have a good day. And if you have a bad day, that doesn't mean you're backsliding. That doesn't mean that everything that you've done is for naught. It means you had a bad day.
Yep.
You could have a bad 20 minutes. A bad 20 minutes does not mean you have a bad day.
Yeah, I'll admit that's been making the rounds on Facebook about that. Comparing it to money. You know, that I love that thing. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have 500 whatever.
Yeah.
1,000 seconds in a day, whatever. If someone steals $20 from you, you still have whatever.
Yeah.
Don't let the $20 ruin the fact that.
Yep.
So it's something. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind. It's not always easy, but at least if you're aware of it, you can use that to your advantage. So now, God help us, we're going to get Mr. Nigma, the Riddler, on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Mr. Nigma. I'm Dr. Issues.
What kind of tree can you carry in your hand?
A palm. And I offer mine as a handshake.
Very well, Dr. Issues. That was an easy one.
I'm not going to make this entire session nothing but riddles. As a matter of fact, I wanted to ask you, does anyone approach you with riddles of their own?
All the time. But of course, no one can fool me.
So, since you spend so much time on answering and asking riddles, how do I know that this isn't just all rote memorization? That doesn't really require any skill.
How dare you impugn my intellect? I spent hours upon my craft, creating the greatest challenges to the most superior minds. And you come in here and say it's all a spiel? You should have your license revoked.
It wasn't an insult. There are plenty of different types of intelligence. I mean, you clearly have a fantastic memory, you're highly creative, but there's also emotional intelligence, and that's the one I'd like to focus on, if I may.
Emotional riddles aren't in my repertoire.
So I've already stumped you? Wow, that was surprisingly quick.
You haven't stumped me! Emotional riddles simply aren't worth my time and effort. They're not theatrical enough for my taste, and they're not good enough for the Batman.
So you have difficulty finding comfort in the mundane. I mean, it's okay to have average results and responses once in a while.
There is nothing average about me. Your repeated insults are wearing thin. For your sake, I actually do have an emotional riddle, but I'd rather keep you in suspense.
I have a feeling you're riffing on the idea that I'm an idiot.
You catch on pretty quick, Doctor.
Then please let it be known that I really wasn't insulting you. I'm pointing out that your interactions don't all have to be riddles, and I can help you through that discomfort if you just speak to me in a way that doesn't remind me of Jeopardy.
Again, your comparisons to lesser minds grate on my patience. You speak of not wanting to insult me, yet your every word drips with derision and simple-mindedness.
So you want to talk on the most sophisticated level while you typically dress like an extravagant game show host and proceed to put yourself in situations involving people that are willing to pound you into oblivion whenever they catch you. The one thing that we can agree on is that I don't understand your game.
Of course not, because it's not meant for you. Does a child understand how to play chess?
Actually, I know several children that know how to play chess. I mean, they may not be grandmasters, but that's not the point.
But it is the point. You think Bobby Fischer or Gary Kasparov spent their time playing in the park against the old man at the chess table? No, they sought out only the greatest competition to sharpen their minds. Anything less is wasted time and effort. You don't sharpen a fine blade using a dull tool.
But the point of a tool is to use it, and I can actually tell you that whether it's Fischer or Kasparov or any of the other grandmasters, they still comment or participate in matches with people that you'd consider to be inferior. I mean, they know that at some point people are going to come up with new ideas regardless of their level. They have to be aware of it. A saw that's the sharpest in the world and is only used cut once isn't really valuable.
But it has inherent value as the sharpest in the world. That in and of itself makes it valuable.
All right, so with you being the second most valuable thing...
You impudent fool! I am Batman's greatest adversary. The clown has his tricks to be sure, but quantity will never equal quality. And I've bested him numerous times. How does that not make me his greatest foe?
Well, I think there's at least one other person who could challenge you on that, and I know that they're capable of putting up a fight more so than you, which is also why I've had no problem verbally sparring with you. You'll just come up with some other riddle to insult me instead of finding a way to kill me while laughing about it like so many others.
Who then? Who else would challenge my spot as Batman's nemesis? Who are you referring to? It doesn't matter. No one else still comes close to me.
Really? No one else has questioned his ability to maintain his persona as Batman. No one's actually made him temporarily an enemy of Gotham. No one's left him physically incapable of protecting the citizenry he loves the most. You know what? I don't think you actually know who I'm talking about at this point. Stumped?
Stumped? I'll give you stumped. He who makes it doesn't use it. He who buys it doesn't know he uses it. He who uses it can't see it or feel it.
A coffin. Oh, okay, let me guess. You're threatening, to put me in one, right?
A threat implies there's a chance you'll survive.
In that case, I'll wait patiently for the clues that you'll give because you've never addressed any of the issues when you had the opportunity to talk with me.
I don't owe you an explanation or a riddle. You're merely an annoyance, a mosquito buzzing about my head while I'm working.
Then in that case, I'm your greatest chance for a cure. Because if you were to swat me like a mosquito without giving a riddle, then my mission is accomplished. It would also imply that you'd have to acknowledge that you were wrong. That is quite the conundrum, isn't it?
Are you attempting to riddle the Riddler?
Well, that would imply there's a chance you'll figure it out.
You smarmy son of a...
Couldn't riddle your way out of the handcuffs, though, could you, huh? Security, I think we're done here. Please take Mr. Nigma back to his cell. But, leave him a book of logic puzzles, because that'll keep him occupied for, 5 minutes or so.
I feel like we should end this on a riddle, but I can't be bothered to look them up.
Well, I have one. It's not really a riddle, it's a joke, but... How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb?
None. The light bulb has to make the change first. Something along those lines?
Oh, I like that. I was going to say just one, but the light bulb really has to change. It really has to want to change.
That's what I...
Yeah.
I was going for that.
Yeah. All right.
Just one, but the light bulb has to want to change first.
Yep. Okay.
What's green and purple and still stuck in a cell?
Nice.
So that's going to wrap it up for this week. Next week, we have our second creator interview with Erica Schultz, and we're going to be discussing Callum Cooper from 12 Devils Dancing. So please go out and check that out. It's a fantastic read. It's a pretty brief one. There's only, I think, 2 issues worth of stories. It's a short little graphic story. So it'll take you about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour to get through it. So we'll be talking with Erica about that and some of her work for the Big Two. And then we're going to get into She-Hulk, which is Ruby's suggestion, and Jason Todd, who Ariel wants us to talk about. So we've got some big names coming up. And I really, for one, as I said last week in the mailbag, I really can't wait to get into She-Hulk because the lawyer in me is very interested in discussing all of the legal ramifications of She-Hulk.
Right. I'm wondering. I know we're capes on the couch, but for something like that, should we be capes in court?
I know we've discussed that as an option. I wouldn't say Jen will be capes in court because we're still going into the analysis of a character. I think capes in court would be the idea that you and I have bandied about for an issue or for an episode on the notion of estate planning in a world in which death is not permanent. That is a legal question that I have been doing a little bit of research here and there on. I'd actually love to give a CLE lecture on it and tie it into some real world applications of actual estate planning techniques because I am an estate planning attorney on the side. And so that is an idea that I think would role reverse a little bit because then I would be the expert and you'd be the one firing questions at me. And that seems weird.
Yeah. That would be awkward. I'm not going to lie, but I'm also fascinated by that idea. So,
well, if our listeners really want to hear it, let us know. Are you interested in Capes in Court, a special episode where I talk about what happens to your will if there's a chance you could come back from the dead? Do you just put it into a trust? Do you just hold on to it? Do you just repossess stuff? Like what happened with the snap, in Avengers? What happened to all those people who died?
Oh my gosh.
And then their stuff, and now they're back. What happens to their stuff? What happens to the people, mild spoilers, Spider-Man Far From Home, the people just reappear 5 years later. Just out of nowhere. Just what happens?
Yuck.
What happens to their stuff? What happens to the people who aged, who didn't age? How does that work? What are the legal ramifications of that? I guarantee you there is a wealth of legal discussion that can be had about the ramifications of Thanos' snap. And if our listeners want to hear it, I will be more than happy to become the legal expert. We'll take a break from the psychological stuff and we'll delve into the legal ramifications of what that's about. So you let us know. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, capesonthecouch@gmail.com, email. We've got our Patreon page. We now have a TeePublic. You can buy the merch, tpublic.com/user/capesonthecouch. You can buy t-shirts, mugs, a notebook, or other various swag with our amazing logo on it. We love hearing from you. Please like, rate, and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Podcoin, iTunes. If you listen to us on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please do so, because that helps other people find this show. And that's what we're all about, is more people finding the show so they can find out about whether or not their OCD is real. So, Doc, anything else before we head out?
Nah, because I think saying too much after dealing with so many riddles is just going to fall flat.
Fair enough. All right, so for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.